Start with contracting sprites. Chapter 331, The Terrifying Sun. On the elemental lake, the battles continued one after another. It was different from the previous tests of comprehension, potential, and willpower. At this moment, it was a test of strength. Everyone's results and ranking had changed quite a lot. Some sprite trainers who had achieved pretty good results in the previous rounds were abused and wrecked. There were also people among the 20 to 30 people who had lower rankings among the group. They erupted with powerful strength, making people look at them with surprise. However, the choice of tactics is still very important. I have to fully utilize the environmental advantages of the elemental lake. How should one perform? After watching several rounds, every sprite trainer had their own idea. Without a doubt, it was most suitable to use a big move in this battle. If the big move wasn't big enough or strong enough, and the upper limit was weaker than other sprites, it would be very disadvantageous. After all, no matter how compressed and amplified ordinary unique skills were, there was still a limit. Unless it's like Butterfly, directly producing a few cannon turrets, otherwise. The 20 to 30 people present were all geniuses from various countries. They had more or less mastered some secret manuals, and the depth of their tactics was definitely not limited to just the first and second levels. The important distinction now was whether they were on the 5th level or the 50th level. Boom! Dragon Nation, Sword God Li Jianxian wins. Below, the Sword God's battle method was no longer close combat. Instead, he slashed with his sword, slashing out golden sword lights dozens of meters long. They were densely packed and gathered into a golden river, directly defeating his opponent. At this moment, Li Jianxian, who had used a big move, was neither angry nor breathless. In the environment of the elemental lake, not only has the power of his killer move become stronger, he can also use it more freely. Back then, Li Jianxian, who fought Yan, also used a similar killer move. But the duration was very short, and the opponent admitted defeat after a while. Right now, it's hard to say if Yan's 6 ghosts pulling coffin can absorb the sword river. Lan Qing and Xia's performance was also very good. Especially Lan Qing. Her sprite was originally an extraordinary level cloud devouring WIRM, but at some point, it had already evolved into a leaping mist snake, turning from the lowest battle power in the team into an ace. With a thought, a grey wind wave that could tear everything apart appeared. Next, Golden Eagle Federation's Sun Adolf against Kangaroo Nation. As the judge finished speaking, pairs of eyes looked at the man who looked like a blazing sun. As expected, he was the strongest person in the inheritance battle. The most threatening person. Element Lake. Under the influence of the elemental energy of the Joy Sparrow, the damage caused by the previous few battles had already been restored before long. The entire lake was still as flat as a mirror, shimmering with colorful light. Sun landed on the left. 6 sprites, 3 fire element, 2 thunder element, and 1 earth element. And every one of them is very strong. His opponent, the young man from the Kangaroo Nation, was very nervous at this moment. When the judge waved the flag, the young man from the Kangaroo Nation immediately attacked. Huge thunder balls floated and connected with each other in thunder arcs. With crackling sounds, they spun and circled. Dozens of thunder balls combined into a formation and pushed forward like bright stars. But the next moment, in front of the sun, the fire god soldier, which was made of fire elements and had a strong body that could be seen with 8 abdominal muscles, put its hands together, and its aura instantly rose. Whoosh! Whoosh! The wind was howling, and the flames were roaring. On the elemental lake, endless fire elemental particles gathered. Red light blossomed, and from the ground to the sky, flames filled the sky in an instant. In the raging sea of fire, a figure of a fire god soldier that was enlarged by 100,000 times appeared, like a flame devil king. It stretched out its hand slowly but quickly. In an instant, the sea of fire moved with it. Like a tiger pouncing and a dragon leaping, it swept across everything in front of it. When the raging flames dissipated again, only a few unconscious sprites and the terrified Kangaroo Nation sprite trainer appeared under the Flame Devil King. The might of a single strike was so terrifying. On the cliff, countless sprite trainers were shocked. Even though they already had some understanding of Sun's strength, they still felt despair. Their difference in strength was like a chasm. The Sun is too strong. He's not on the same level as us at all. Yet, that attack just now already had the power of a monarch, right? Even in the environment of the elemental lake, it's too. The strength of the Dragon Nation's sprite trainer is unexpected. The Sword God's Sword River also has unparalleled power, but in comparison, the Fire God Soldier insta-killed 4 sprites just now, and then easily controlled the aftershock. That's the most despairing. Unrivaled. Unrivaled. If the 6th God of Dragon Nation and the Wind Speaker had been born a few years earlier, we might have been able to see a fierce battle. Unfortunately, now. The killer move just now was indeed very strong. In terms of power, I'm indeed inferior. Su Hao was deep in thought. Then, he saw the Sun look up from below. In his eyes, there was determination and confidence, as if he wanted to grasp victory. I will not lose. His eyes revealed such a meaning. But Su Hao wouldn't back down either. Even if I can get the inheritance slot as long as I fight casually, but I, Su Hao, am 19 years old and have never tasted defeat. Today, I shall not be defeated. It seemed as if Sun could see the battle intent in Su Hao's eyes. Next, every battle of the Sun's child was very explosive. He crushed his opponents and won completely. Throughout the whole process, the other sprite trainers had already gone from shock to numbness. Compared to the Sun, Su Hao's battle seemed abnormally ordinary and lasted for a long time. Gurgle. Butterfly's eyes curved into crescents. It wasn't a sprite that liked to fight, but under the environment of the elemental lake, Butterfly was very happy. If there was anything lacking, it was. Its opponent wasn't cooperating. Gurgle. Who would cooperate with you and obediently be bombed? Su Hao complained. Dumb Unicorn, Big Fat Bear, and the other sprites also battled very happily. After a few battles, each of them had obvious improvements. It's certainly very cocky of the Sun to defeat his opponent in an instant, but only by staying longer in the Lake of Elements and fighting more intensely can I enjoy more benefits. It's not wise to act cool for the sake of a moment of glory. Besides, I never show off or act cocky. Su Hao turned around. Endless energy flowed behind him, exploding into 7-colored clouds. The waves dissipated, leaving only the few sprites facing them lying on the ground. He didn't look back. Blue and white clouds gathered under his feet and carried him, Big Fat Bear, and the others as they slowly flew high and returned to the cliff. Then, he patted the non-existent smoke and dust on his body. They returned to the Dragon Nation team. Only the others were left stunned. At this moment, the number of people who had yet to lose decreased. The judge took out 2 sticks, glanced at them, and said, "Rest for 20 minutes, next." He paused for a moment. Dragon Nation's Su Hao and White Bear Nation's Winter Aria Singer, Bella. In an instant, countless gazes gathered. The big battle today had finally begun. Chapter 332, In Battle. First, you have to have enough aura. Before this, the battles were very intense and terrifying. When the video was posted online, the number of clicks exceeded 100 million in minutes. But the difference between the strong and the weak was still relatively obvious. Everyone was looking forward to the few strongest people in the Supernova Cup to fight each other. Su Hao had already proven his strength in the previous battles. In the eyes of others, the 6th God is definitely the person with the highest potential in this inheritance competition. Even in terms of strength, he can rank in the top 5. That's right, he's not even 20. He's actually so fierce, and he's also my type. I like handsome little young men like him. Ahem, big sister, you are already an old auntie, you have to learn to respect yourself. Although there were some abnormal voices among the crowd, the focus of the discussion was still on Suhao and Bella. The sixth god is indeed strong, but the winter aria singer Bella is 5 years older than him. I heard that Bella fought the inheritance battle 3 years ago. This year, her strength will definitely be ranked in the top 3 or even the top 2 among everyone. I'm optimistic about Bella. Yes, I think so too, but against the sixth god, Bella should also show her trump cards. In the previous rounds, Bella easily froze the opponents into popsicles. 20 minutes of rest passed in a flash. Butterfly and the others were already at the treatment center next door, replenishing the energy consumed just now by about 10 to 20%. They returned to its peak state. Soon, they landed on the familiar elemental lake. Feeling the extremely rich elemental particles, every sprite became happy. Of course, they weren't thinking about the same thing. What Butterfly was happy about was that it could bomb indefinitely. Boom 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 was addictive. The dazed crow was naturally happy. It could cut people. During the Supernova Cup, it had been in an excited state. It only felt that its crow life had reached its peak. As for Big Fat Bear, how could it act unhappy when its big sister was so happy? Sob sob sob. Wah. Behind him, Effa pulled out a black umbrella and opened it to block the colorful particles drifting over. Ayan floated out of the shadow. The black-robed figure appeared behind it like a substitute. It had already gotten ready and entered battle mode. Suhao, who was surrounded by sprites in the middle, looked across. The short brown-haired Bella held a huge hammer and smashed it onto the ice lake. In front of her were sprites with extraordinary auras. Polar nine tails with 9 tails dancing like ribbons. The flaming phoenix butterfly scattered dark blue light dots and danced on Bella's head. Further ahead was a huge black spider. It had 8 long, black legs that were as sharp as blades. Its upper body was a black-skinned humanoid. It was very enchanting. On its naked body, there were strange patterns that covered half of its body like tattoos. Dark Element Sprite, Dark Night Empress. One of Bella's trump cards. The next sprite was the size of a small mountain. Its whole body was covered in dense and thick white hair. Its 2 huge front teeth went up and then bent back. As it breathed, it stirred the air, and coldness spread. Ice Element Sprite, Icebound Mammoth. In the first few rounds, Bella used the extreme cold stream spat out by the Icebound Mammoth as her core tactic and easily sealed the opponent. No matter how the opponent struggled, they would be frozen in the huge ice. Even if they were rescued, those sprite trainers and sprites seemed to have left behind an indelible psychological trauma. Icebound Mammoth, Dark Night Empress, Polar Nine Tails, and Flaming Phoenix Butterfly are Bella's 4 main forces. She also had a mount that wasn't very strong, Snowfield Sky Deer. She had fewer sprites than Suhao. But at the extraordinary level, the difference between 2 individuals was extreme. The elite level advantage of having more sprites didn't exist at all at the extraordinary level. If they were weak, they would be insta-killed. In the sky, the judge riding a flying sprite waved the flag, and a loud voice echoed. In an instant, the icebound mammoth at the front of Bella's team charged ahead abruptly. Amidst the rumbling, white cold air visible to the naked eye rose like waves and rolled forward. At the same time, the Dark Night Empress spread its arms and rotated them around her chest. Black aura spread out, like ink dripping into water. In an instant, the white cold air was dyed with a layer of black, becoming even more terrifying. It rolled forward. Everywhere it passed, only a thick layer of ice was left. In the ice layer, there was also some strange black color. It's here, Bella's killer move, Flood of Ice. It's not a simple flood of ice. After fusing with the corrosive secret manual of the Dark Night Empress, the flood became even more terrifying. In the previous rounds, there were also people who shot out endless energy attacks, but they were still destroyed by the flood of ice. It's not something that can be blocked with just firepower coverage. Indeed. In their eyes, hundreds of energy balls, huge thunder balls, and roaring water dragons blasted out. Its power was not inferior to the icebound flood either, but the moment the two forces collided, the black mist on the torrent covered everything else. The balls containing extreme energy seemed to be weakened a little, and in the next moment, they were covered by the frozen torrent. Rumble. There was an explosion, but it wasn't as fierce as the previous few rounds. The aftershock only swept out a few hundred meters. In the smoke and dust, the rolling grayish-white torrent continued forward, devouring all kinds of elements along the way. Not only did it not lose anything, it continued to grow stronger. Unless it exceeds a level in energy, no. What the f***ck? Dense dark clouds suddenly appeared in the sky, covering a range of thousands of meters. In the blackened surroundings, thunder arcs flickered, and a huge and terrifying beast suddenly stretched out from the dark clouds. Just like the Flame Devil King aura of the Sun, it was extremely terrifying. The huge beast stretched out 2/3 of its body, bringing with it endless water and lightning. Giant waves surged and thunder surrounded it. The figure with an aura of a Devil King appeared and pressed down with its hoof. Boom! The surging torrent of ice broke through from the center. Endless white mist spread out, and the water instantly froze into ice. But before it completely froze, it was crushed by the lightning. At this moment, on the elemental lake, on the left, the icebound mammoth and the Dark Knight Empress were constantly outputting energy. On the right, the dumb unicorn roared towards the sky. The big fat bear raised its palms high, and thick lightning burst out from its hands, directly shooting into the dark clouds. The thunder rain giant beast roared, its huge hooves suppressing everything. But the frozen torrent also grew endlessly, bringing a lot of trouble to the huge beast. White mist gathered in all directions. Rolling thunder destroyed pieces of ice. At this moment, the polar nine-tails and flaming phoenix butterfly, which had been staying beside Bella, pounced forward. Ice blue light blossomed on the nine-tails. Dark blue flames emerged from the body of the flaming phoenix butterfly and instantly turned into a sea of fire. Not only did it not dispel the cold air, but it also made the cold flow become even more terrifying. The air was also frozen. So, Bella's flood of ice isn't a two-fold combination skill, but fourfold. There's no way to stop it. At this moment, the completely frozen torrent turned the whole sky grey. Crack, 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 the ice kept spreading, freezing the sky and the ground. The destructive power of the lightning couldn't catch up to the speed of the ice seal either. The huge and terrifying thunder rain beast hundreds of meters tall was gradually frozen and ice spread. It struggled even more and was weakening. The power of the flood of ice was completely different from before. Su Hao saw this and started thinking. Indeed, I don't have a real team battle combination skill. It doesn't have a core killer move that involves all the sprites. But in a battle, you can win as long as you have enough aura. The dazed crow entered the sun form and slashed out a blazing and resplendent red light dozens of meters long towards the opposite direction. Under the rich elemental environment, the eternal night glory concubine also instantly entered a fusion state. It danced like a demon god. In the dark clouds, stars shone and fell like rain. Ayan floated up. Ghost shadows appeared under its black robe and danced around it. In an instant, they condensed into a huge energy ball more than 10 meters in diameter, like a black hole. It was still growing. It made the surrounding space seem to distort. It seemed as if one's entire body was about to sink in just by looking at it. The sprite trainers who thought that Su Hao was going to lose immediately thought, "What the f***ck? What the f***ck? What the f***ck?" Voice cracked. Chapter 333, There's nothing in the world that can't be solved by some boom boom boom. Dazed crow, Fu, Ayan, have all used their full-screen attack secret techniques. Countless bright red lights shot out and formed a blazing river. Under the environment of the fusion state and the elemental lake, the shining meteors that the eternal night bright concubine summoned gradually expanded like real stars, covering the entire sky. At a slightly lower position, Ayan's hands remained in a supporting position. Many ugly, pixelated ghosts were flying around the huge energy ball. It continued to grow. Although the giant ball was only a dozen or so meters in diameter, in the eyes of the layman, it didn't seem as powerful as the blazing river or the shining stars. However, the audience present were all professionals. They could use all sorts of methods to sense that within the giant dark energy ball, there was an energy that made people want to explode. Under normal circumstances, Ayan's giant super shadow energy ball can only be expanded to a diameter of 3 to 5 meters. Under normal circumstances, Ayan wouldn't have enough time to cast it. But now, in just a few seconds, it has already expanded to a diameter of more than 10 meters and is still expanding. Endless elemental particles gathered and compressed. Dense shadow energy, resembling black smoke and sticky liquid, floated and swayed outside the energy ball. There were also traces of purple-blue lightning arcs that appeared in space. A destructive aura spread out in the blink of an eye, making people and sprites weak in the knees. My legs feel heavy. Butterfly also changed its tactic and no longer used energy balls. 3 fist-sized balls were now in front of Butterfly, spinning clockwise and forming a round mirror larger than its entire body. Countless green particles gathered from all directions like streams of light. A dazzling emerald green light bloomed. In just a moment, a thick green pillar of light with a diameter of 1 to 2 meters shot out from in front of Butterfly. It pierced through the heavy air and circles of shock waves spread out. Unique skill, Wood Spirit Shock Wave. The sprites all unleashed powerful attacks. For a moment, the weather changed. Energy surged forward, and space seemed to be distorted. This isn't a team battle. Someone shouted. The team battle system clearly had to revolve around a certain core to allow the sprites to cooperate perfectly and unleash the power of synergy. However, the sprites were clearly not cooperating. That's why in a battle, momentum is the most important. As long as Su Hao used cheats and created secret techniques that were suitable for the individual sprites to perform, he wouldn't have to waste his brains to think of a tactical system that required cooperation. Su Hao shrugged. At this moment, facing the terrifying energy that erupted one after another, Bella's expression became extremely solemn. As the ice-sealing mammoth controlled the torrent, it stomped its front foot, and huge blocks of ice that were 100 meters tall rose with a bang, blocking the incoming red beams. In an instant, the ice flew around, and hot air currents rose, but large ice shields also kept appearing. It had temporarily blocked the raging river of heat. Bella still did not dare to relax. The shining stars in the sky and the shadow energy ball that was already more than 20 meters in diameter were terrifying killer moves. It was already too late to stop them. We must fight with our attacks. Her short brown hair swayed in the wind, and a white icicle appeared on her forehead. An invisible force spread out and enveloped the sprites. The ice-sealing mammoth's aura rose again. From the icy torrent, a spiral-shaped grayish-white cyclone appeared and collided with the emerald-green shockwave. As white clashed with green, the two thick beams of light collided left and right. Rings of aftershocks exploded, stirring up the elemental particles in the sky. On the 9 long fur-like tails of the polar nine-tails behind the mammoth, a shadow more than 10 meters long appeared. In the next moment, it merged into one, and from the extreme cold current, 1, 2, 3 pieces flew out. Countless ice cubes gathered in the air. 10 meters, 20 meters, 50 meters. With just one single breath, it formed a huge 100-meter-long ice cone. Cold air overflowed and light flowed. A terrifying aura also dissipated. The dark blue flames produced by the flaming phoenix butterfly also expanded under the enhancement of the winter aria singer Bella. For a moment, the entire ice torrent became even more terrifying, covering 3/4 of the distance like a wave. At this moment, in the sky, black meteors shining with white light fell like raindrops. The shadow energy ball, which was dozens of meters in diameter, was also gently thrown out by a yan. Like a black hole, it rolled forward. Everywhere it passed, space became distorted, and destructive thunder appeared. Finally, like a comet falling or a nuclear bomb exploding, dazzling light was emitted and endless energy particles exploded with a bang. The whole world turned into chaos. The storm swept and enveloped the entire elemental lake. Standing thousands of meters away, everyone on the cliff could feel a strong wind blowing. All of them widened their eyes and looked at the center of the lake with some seriousness and shock. They looked at the place covered by dust and endless energy as they swallowed their saliva. Duke André and many Heavenly King big bosses even summoned their sprites to focus on observing the situation inside. If things got out of hand, they were prepared to intervene at any time. Heaven and earth changed color, the aftershock of the loud sound continued for a while, and finally, it gradually calmed down. The smoke and dust also started to dissipate. The sprite trainers on the cliff all used their methods to look towards the center of the lake. On Suhao's side, the thunder rain huge beast had already disappeared. The water curtains dissipated one after another, and the armored thunder roaring also had some traces of frost on its body. The aura of sprites was a little unstable. In the head-on collision just now, there was no doubt that they had both suffered some aftershock. But under the destructive aftershock, they actually only suffered minor injuries. Isn't that too terrifying? Some people exclaimed. On Bella's side, the 100-meter-tall ice blocks that were raised had already shattered into pieces. The surging torrent of ice also dissipated. Bella stared out at the protective screen. The icebound mammoth at the front suffered heavy injuries from the aftershock. Fortunately, the battle power of the Dark Knight Empress and the others is still intact. Now, it's my turn. Just as Bella was about to give the order for her whole army to attack. Suddenly, his heart palpitated. When she looked up, a black-robed figure flew into the sky, and a huge shadow energy ball appeared again. With a rumble, stars shone one after another. Brilliant blazing sun flew high. Clouds and thunder intertwined. The terrifying waves that had just dissipated suddenly appeared again in the next moment, covering the sky. Bella's eyes widened. She was so angry that her whole body trembled. She had no choice but to swear in her mother tongue. There was no way to fight anymore. Boom! When the boom resounded through the whole world and the white scene gradually became clear, what appeared in front of everyone was only the fallen icebound mammoth and the Dark Knight Empress. The other injured sprites. And the top genius whose mental state was currently very bad, Bella. She had been defeated. Chapter 334, Battle of the Peak, Mighty Sovereign. Winter aria singer Bella had lost. Yes, and she lost very decisively. Bella's tactical system is clearly perfect, but Dragon Nation's Suhao was unreasonably strong. He didn't just blast once, but he actually managed to do it a second time right after the first. How unfair! Do you think the sixth god of Dragon Nation can defeat the Sun? A sprite trainer asked. Before the battle, many sprite trainers had only ranked the sixth god in the top 5. They didn't think he would have a high chance of winning against Bella, let alone the Sun. At the moment, however, every sprite of the sixth god can erupt with power close to monarch rank under the environment of the elemental lake. He might actually have a slight chance of defeating the Sun. After all, hasn't the famous winter aria singer, Bella, lost already? Of course. Naturally, the crowd had ranked them based on the intelligence gathered before the start of the inheritance battle. So the reputation of the geniuses of the various countries determined their ranking. At this point in the battle, there were only 2 people who were the most dazzling. The first was Sixth God, whose potential was so great it discouraged the others. The second was Sun, who had always been dazzling and eye-catching. Like a high and mighty sun, he made it seem impossible to catch up to him. Undoubtedly, the sun was stronger, but when it came to the actual outcome of the battle, the crowd started to develop mixed feelings about the matter. The thought lasted only a few minutes. Boom! The golden sword river collided with the blazing flames and exploded abruptly. Amidst the rolling smoke and heat waves, a terrifying giant flame beast pounced forward, swallowing the sword river and pouncing in front of the sword god, who was shrouded in an illusion and had solid sword intent. The giant flame beast slashed down with its claw. Boom! Flames hundreds of meters tall exploded and shot into the sky. The golden figure rushed out in a sorry state, wanting to break through and attack the sun directly, but he couldn't even approach within 1,000 meters. Under the encirclement of the Flame Devil King and the giant flame beast, Li Jianxian, whose slash was thousands of meters long, only lasted 3 or 5 moves before finally being defeated. At this moment, the sun was still standing at the same spot. 2 sprites, one on his left and another on his right, were protecting him. On the left was the fire god soldier with its glazed flames. The Flame Devil King appeared above it, emitting a monstrous pressure. On the right was a big bird with a human face and 4 eyes. On the head of the big bird was a blazing white ring that emitted endless light and terrifying heat. Fire element sprite, Grand Sun Wheel. Torrential flames poured out from the big bird's body, igniting the sea of fire in the sky. A huge fire beast walked out of the sea of fire. Just like the fire god soldier, the power exuded by the Grand Sun Wheel. That's a pseudo-monarch rank sprite. Sun doesn't just have one pseudo-monarch, he has 2. The difference in strength is just too great. Was the sword god weak? No. The power of the sword river was still shocking, but was nothing compared to Sun's strength. If the sword god's sword master were to be pseudo-monarch rank, then he might still have a chance. But the sword master in his hand was only extraordinary high level or even mid-level. The result was obvious. Sword god Li Jianxian only lasted for a short while before he was ultimately defeated. He couldn't even injure the sun. The difference in their strength is too obvious. It's not something that techniques or secret manuals can make up for. Actually, it wasn't impossible. But the sun was born into a wealthy family in the Golden Eagle Federation. He had also studied at the number 1 university in the Federation and even became a disciple of a crown-level sprite trainer. The secret manual he mastered most likely surpassed 99% of the young sprite trainers present. The difference in level was significant. He also had superior secret manuals and unique skills. The sun was also a natural ability user. When these things were put together, it made people despair. But the ones who are most desperate now should be the 6 god of Dragon Nation, right? That's right. At this point, only the 2 of them are left. If they continue to win like this, they will eventually have to fight no matter what. A few minutes ago, I thought that the 6 god would be able to fight against the sun, but now, my opinion has changed again. There were still some Su Hao supporters left who felt that the 6 god still had his trump cards. But Sun had also defeated his opponents without having to rely on his full strength. With this comparison, Su Hao's chances of winning still seemed slim. Relax, you're only 20 years old this year. Winning or losing doesn't matter, Heavenly King Gongling comforted. Heavenly King Lai Kong also said, that's right. You still have a lot of time. I think that as long as you are given 30 months to train, it won't be a problem to surpass the sun. Su Hao opened his mouth, but still didn't say anything. He just sat on the soft cloud formed by the dumb unicorn, opened the interface, and observed and dissected the battle scenes bit by bit. He had collected the data of Sun's various sprites from the previous battles. At this moment, his battle with the sun didn't begin immediately. In the middle, Lan Qing, Xia, and the others fought another 2 battles. The Union's jury was busy making the final judgment according to the results of the previous rounds. Time ticked by. From morning to afternoon. The 20 to 30 young Sprite trainers qualified to participate in the Elemental Lake assessment had done what they came here to do. What's left was the much anticipated Battle of the Peak. Sprite trainers, please enter. The judge flying in the sky sounded a little excited. Su Hao patted the dumb unicorn. The cloud supported him and the other sprites and slowly entered into the lake. At this moment, the son of the sun opposite also rode his hell warhorse and arrived at the lake. 6 sprites lined up and stood at the optimal battle position. Fire God Soldier, Grand Sun Wheel, Thunderous Pig King, Lightning Leopard Cat, Gargoyle Dragon. Like Su Hao, Sun had 6 extraordinary sprites. Besides the Fire God Soldier and Grand Sun Wheel, who were already pseudo-monarch sprites, the others were all experienced extraordinary. They weren't weak at all. In terms of lineup, it was already a whole level higher than Bella. When dealing with Bella, Su Hao used an unreasonable infinite bombing method. If Su Hao used the same tactic on the Sun, however, I'm afraid the same tactic won't work this time. The Sun himself was also good at fighting, and his energy level was high. A head-on collision was inappropriate. Su Hao had to use a more roundabout tactic. It's time to showcase my true commanding skills. In the sky, the Heavenly King level judge waved the flag, and his whole body retreated rapidly. In an instant. Whoosh! The wind and clouds surged, the sky changed color. The flames on the Fire God Soldier's body quickly turned glassy as its aura kept increasing. The halo above Grand Sun Wheel's head blossomed with dazzling light. The Sun himself was also like a huge light bulb. Rings of light spread out, and buffs were applied on the sprites. In just an instant, a terrifying flame devil king appeared in the sky. Amidst the torrential flames, the giant flame beast walked out. The aura and pressure were even stronger than what Su Hao had felt when he fought the sword god. The sprites were like 2 monarchs walking out of flames. The moment the battle started, there was a big explosion. Chapter 335, Illusion Palace, Fair Confrontation. The flames were hot and space appeared distorted. The powerful pressure of the attacking waves was so strong it seemed that it was close to materializing. Sprites like the Dazed Crow, Eternal Night Glory Concubine, and the others who had states to activate had already activated their states. They also stacked their buff continuously. The sprite's aura was also rising, but it was still a level lower than the Sun's team. The difference was obvious. How is the 6 god going to deal with it? Pairs of eyes were either calm, excited, expectant, or regretful, as they looked at the figure below. There were no dark clouds or thunder. There was no huge shadow energy ball that could distort space. And the giant flame beast was already approaching. The flame devil king like Fire God Soldier also flew over. At this moment, time seemed to have stopped. The monstrous flames stopped flickering. The ferocious flame devil king was still in mid-air, and the roaring huge beast had just raised its claws. Only a crisp sound could be heard. Gurgle. 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 Around Butterfly's body, 3 fist-sized precious balls spun rapidly. The energy stored inside each of the balls was being extracted quickly. The transformation pearl hanging in front of its chest glowed. Wisps of grayish-white gas flew out of the milky white mirage energy pearl and entered the void. The dazed hair on its head straightened. With a crisp and pleasant sound, circles of invisible ripples spread rapidly. In an instant, elemental particles of various colors floated up in an area of thousands of meters around the elemental lake, like threads and streams of light, constantly gathering. White spiritual light blossomed from Butterfly's body again. Sturdy palaces were projected in the spiritual sea. In an instant, from top to bottom of the elemental lake, one after another appeared. A grand and magnificent sight. Bordering between reality and illusion, illusion palaces were erected. The palaces enveloped the entire elemental lake area. From the appearance of the sound, to the fluctuation of energy, and then to the materialization of the palaces. All of this happened in an instant. Time seemed to have stopped. At this point, time finally regained its flow. The flames leaped again. The fire god soldier flying in midair carried the torrential flames and continued flying towards its target like a flame devil king. When it saw the body of the palace suddenly appear, flames burst out from its body, and its glass-colored arm swept out with a punch. However, boom! Fire god soldier's arm hit the illusory palace wall, freezing for a moment before it suddenly bounced back. What the FCK? What the FCK? The sprite trainer on the cliff was immediately shocked. What secret manual is this? It can actually trap a monarch-level fire god soldier. Even someone as knowledgeable as Bai Xiaoming was confused. Many heavenly kings looked and fell into deep thought. It might be an illusion that can interfere with reality. An erudite heavenly king spoke, his words transmitted into everyone's ears through the sprite's translation. Legend has it that when one's attainments in illusion are at the peak, they can use illusions to interfere with reality, but Butterfly Fairy is only at the extraordinary level. It's impossible for it to use something like that to trap all those sprites, right? That's right, the fire god soldier wasn't the only one trapped. Grand Sun Wheel, Thunderous Pig King, and the other sprites of the Sun were all trapped in luxurious halls of the palaces. Outside, heaven and earth shook, wind and clouds rolled, the whole scene looked like doomsday. The grand palaces did not seem to be affected at all. In fact, a fire god soldier blasted out a strike of extreme yang and intensity. Glass-colored flames directly rushed out of the hall and landed on the lake 1,000 meters away, raising terrifying waves of fire like a nuclear bomb explosion. The fire god soldier, which felt that it had stabilized, turned into a blazing stream of light and flew out. The next moment, bang! The more force it exerted when it flew, the more miserable it looked when it was sent flying backwards. The mighty pseudo-monarch sprite was stunned on the spot. Why? Sun didn't know why this was happening either. He was just calmly observing his surroundings. Opposite them, 1,000 meters away, Su Hao, Butterfly, and the other sprites were also in the hall at this moment. The entire illusory hall that connected with reality had already completely covered the element lake. This was the only way to trap 6 powerful sprites. Most of the secret manuals and treasures that Butterfly has mastered have been integrated into one. It can only truly use the illusion palace with the help of the characteristics of the venue. But not only that, the whole illusion palace also integrated parts of Ayan's Gankun in the shadow. The third stage of Gankun in the shadow could forcefully suck the enemy into the shadow space. It could even create independent spaces to trap the enemy. At this moment, the fire god soldier and the others weren't just facing the semi-illusionary wall. There was also the power of space. Su Hao naturally wouldn't explain all of this. Some of the heavenly king's guesses were right. There was also a limit to the conservation of energy. So, Su Hao pressed his hands down. Butterfly's palms that were pressed together rotated 180 degrees. Instantly. In the sun's astonishment, palaces turned upside down and space rotated. In just a moment, the 4 sprites of the sun were also separated. The Thunderous Pig King, the Lightning Leopard Cat, and the Fire God Soldier and Grand Sun Wheel were all located in an independent palace space. Only the Hell Warhorse carrying the sun reacted in time and ordered the Gargoyle Dragon, which had been staying by its side, to not leave its side. Even so, it made the sun break out in cold sweat. "Break the palaces at all costs," he ordered. The aura of the Fire God Soldier and Grand Sun Wheel trapped in the palaces rose again. Explosions kept ringing as illusionary halls started to tremble. Torrential elemental waves were stirred up in the elemental lake. Flames soared into the sky, and thunder exploded. At the same time, Sun used summon again, wanting to call the sprite back to its side. But turn the space, attack, interfere, don't give them a chance to converge. The palaces turned upside down again. Butterfly flew out and appeared in front of the fire god soldier. With a wave of its hand, endless illusion elements scattered down. In the huge hall, smaller halls appeared one after another. At the same time, Ayan turned into a black shadow and landed opposite the Grand Sun Wheel. It had brought along the fully formed 6 ghosts pulling ring that had already been prepared outside the arena. As for the rest, the big fat bear followed the instructions and found the third strongest sprite in the Sun's team, the thunderous Pig King. Fu also stepped into the fusion state and floated to the palace where the lightning leopard cat was. The dazed crow even turned into a blazing sun and flew to the area where the sun was at its fastest speed. It slashed with its wings, and countless red lights blossomed. With endless light and heat, it blasted straight at the sun, who was still trying to summon his sprites. As for Su Hao also rode the dumb unicorn to the exterior of the hall and dismounted. He allowed the dumb unicorn to join in the fight happily. Together with the dazed crow, they attacked the enemy's weakness. Soldiers against soldiers, generals against generals, kings against kings. Now, let's have a fair and just battle.